Hi everyone. Today is Saturday, October 20, and today's video is actually this video is actually going to be called Nonprofit Data Collection Violence. Okay, I just have to adjust this thing. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to try and make the uploading of these videos a little bit quicker, and which means try and reduce the time. But I'm going to try and work with different time frames. So I'm going to try with 5 minutes. I'm going to try with, maybe 5 hours. It depends. So, I am actually going to just show you something here about the need to understand the social context behind processing of environmental justice situations. When you're dealing with things related to air, land, water, soil, and human health, my particular videos focus on black human health. And one of the reasons for that is because a lot of the stuff related to medical knowledge has actually been written by Caucasian people. And if you look at, for example, a lot of the discourses around the connection of sensitivities to, for example, the Caucasian system versus the non-Caucasian system versus the female system versus the multiple-sexed person versus the male system, there's a lot of problems related to the way that the academic knowledge has been constructed. So for people that are actually not involved in this stuff, they look at the knowledge that's out there and they're like, oh, okay, because it exists, it's supposed to be legitimate. But that's not the case, because there's been a lot of problems related to even something called knowledge production violence. And what we do is we also look at this data, this academic data, and we also make the correctives to it as well, in addition to other things. So one of the things that I've actually been talking about in relation to environmental justice is how do you actually begin to negotiate these types of problems. And the environmental justice conception is actually that which was developed by Dr. Robert Bullard in the United States. And what he encouraged us to do was to actually look at issues related to air, land, water, soil, and human health in terms of the differential impacts to including the black community. And he talks about the importance of also getting us involved in processing these different types of situations and getting paid for this stuff, not working on this thing called slave labor. So I'm going to show you something. It's called nonprofit data collection violence. In the city of how do you say this? Okay, in this demographic, it's actually an urban demographic, and it's located in Canada. But Canada is actually split up into like a pizza. So there's all these different regions. So each region is called, for example, a province. And what we're seeing in this one particular province to begin with, it's called Ontario, is that there is so many human rights abuses that are like of the worst in the world. And it's under a very specific type of political analysis or political governance. Other people may not understand this thing called political in those terms. They may understand it as decision making and governance in relation to policy, new laws, and subsequent operationalization of different things. So I'm going to show you something here. They have this non-profit organization, and what I'm going to do is to not give them free advertising. I'm going to show you how these things structure themselves in something called urban. There's non-profit corporate structure, and then there is the private, like a different corporation structure that actually is transparent. And if you look at, for example, what is known as private sector interests, you can actually go on their websites, and they will have shareholder reports, They will have their mission statement. They will even have like details about the running of the organization. Well, something called a nonprofit is also a corporate structure. But I don't know what this thing called a nonprofit is, for example, if they're in the business to make profit. And if you actually set up an organization to say that it's based on no profit, then everything should be volunteer. So why exactly are these things called nonprofits getting funding? What I've noticed is, for example, in this thing called urban demographic in Ontario to begin, you have a lot of these things called nonprofits. And what they do is they find themselves in situations and contexts that are related to dehumanization, police brutality, a lot of harassment, a lot of stuff related to economic displacement, inability to access culture, the right culture, a lot of stuff related to social infrastructure problems. So I'm going to show you an example of this one nonprofit. It basically says that they help people who have been abused, but that's not true. What they do is they present themselves in a way to be something different than how they actually operationalize themselves. And this particular housing, for example, I'm going to show you something here, but I'm going to cover up the names because there's a lot of sickos out there, and what they do is they say, oh my god, that's free advertising. So I'm going to show you something here. Okay. Okay, this is the website here, right? Housing. Right? Okay. Just want to show you something. They have this picture. This is like a piece of a picture on their website. I'm going to put this down for a second. Okay. Then they have paragraphs. Do people actually do a paragraph analysis of what they're talking about? How do they actually connect this data to what is being operationalized? I'm going to show you something here. Sorry. There's 3 paragraphs here. When you're dealing with something in relation to environmental justice, you have to actually get involved with stuff related to brutalities, related to status of cadaver, police harassment, because when you're, for example, dealing with a differential related to the black differential, blacks are subject to all kinds of dehumanization. It's not even funny. I mean, I've shared some videos about, the racially profiled hand, right? And in regards to this particular, and it's not the only nonprofit, but this one is actually very notorious. I think this is a very good case study to actually begin with world legislation to say, you know what, you need to stop this mass murder presentation and operationalization. So basically that page that I show you has a picture of a white male and a black male put together. Now, white folk, you got to speak for yourself. Talking about the black male, do you think a black male wants to see himself marginalized and publicized like that? Right? I didn't show you the picture out of respect of that black male. Maybe he wants a family for himself. Why do they actually put a picture of this black male and translate his experience into something that actually castrates him? This is something called biomedical violence. How does something called a police force actually go and analyze this kind of data? This particular non-profit structure, it actually services at least 800 867 units. So what this thing does is it actually purchases land, different lands or different buildings, and they say, oh, we're going to house these people that have been abused because we're doing charity work. That's not what these motherfuckers are doing. 867 units, right? That's equivalent, like, think of it like, okay, there's like an apartment building or whatever, right? And that's what it should be, an apartment building, right? You have 867 units. Some units are like, I don't know, 1 bedroom, some 2 bedroom, some 3 bedroom, and then you could have like 1 person to like 20 people living in one unit, right? So we're starting with at least 867 units in this one particular nonprofit. Where exactly is the mass murder charge against this nonprofit? And I'll tell you why. When you're dealing with environmental justice, you have to understand the social context. But you also have to understand, okay, what is actually informing the social from a black differential perspective related to air, land, water, soil, and black human health? Data records. How did these biomedical data records talk about black systems, black health systems? You look at this black male, you have a picture of him smiling, he looks happy or whatever, and you know what, you read the shit that they put up on the website. That's not fair. So you know what, you do a video analysis of this shit. There's 3 paragraphs. You gotta look at the paragraphs. Paragraph number 1, what is the purpose of this thing? Paragraph number 2, how do these things operationalize their purpose? Paragraph number 2, what exactly are they catering to? When they talk about abuse and then they reproduce abuse. 867 units. That's at least 1 body in each unit. But it's a rental apartment place. And you know what? Some of these units might have, I don't know, 8 to 10 people. So that could take us like maybe up into like 2,000 people we're dealing with here. We need to try and understand what exactly is the purpose of this thing called nonprofit data. Why exactly is something called biomedical data connected to a nonprofit infrastructure? I was also looking at some other options with respect to getting the word out, with respect to, you know what, this is actually not funny stuff. Because when you're actually trying to operationalize the development of intellectual capital, the amounts that you're dealing with are astronomical. So some people, yes, let them deal with amounts. We're going to deal with percentage points. This is an example, for example, of just some general assessment, of this thing called biomedical data analysis and then connections to violence. Looking at this particular nonprofit, I'm like saying to myself, okay, what is exactly the purpose of this thing? Remember, there's a black male on there. They've totally dehumanized him. They've castrated him. How many people from the Caucasoid community can look at that black male in that way? It says that this nonprofit structure provides some kind of help. I don't know what the help is. The help is actually violence towards people that have, and I won't even say the classification because it's so disgusting, it's not even funny. But they basically connect it to something called, look into something called the origin of psychology. They basically say that they set themselves up where they have this setup, I guess, and it basically helps people who, you know, are experiencing economic displacement and abuse. When someone has abuse experiences, this is not a mental health problem. We're looking at this one. I don't even know what the fuck this thing is called, and it says that basically they offer these options, and they are the single largest non-profit provider of this certain kind of housing in Ontario. They have 41 buildings across what they call Toronto. What's interesting about this is that, for example, how do people actually consent to this bullshit? How do they consent to this? What they have in Ontario, Canada, in urban, is they have this practice where they target blacks. And they say, oh, black this, they have mental problems. That's not true. So what they do is they traffic them into the system where it connects back to the public infrastructure. And they make this presentation to the public infrastructure, and then they say, okay, yeah, we have these people, and this is the data. That's not true. Because you know what? We can show you two pieces of paper. Paper that looks like this, and a paper that looks like this. That's how they present themselves. But they're actually supposed to present themselves like this, because they don't use letterhead. For some things and other things, they don't use any letterhead. I'm looking at their website and I'm saying to myself, okay, you know what, someone wants to learn about this organization. What the hell is this thing, right? What about people in there that should not be there, right? Or what about people in there that, you know what, can't get out? Or what about people in there that have been victimized and have disappeared? At least 867 units. Do they actually assess how many people leave? Why did they leave? Do they do any types of quality assessments? 41 locations across Toronto. So just think 41 apartment buildings. Why is this thing not an apartment building? People are saying, oh, there's, for example, data. There's no data. Of course there's data. Because you know what? This is data. This is environmental justice data, in addition to other things. The economics of this. They talk about, oh, they provide housing for these persons who also have a say in running the organization. Now, this is presented on the page that I showed you with 3 paragraphs. But that is not true. But how do you get to that data? Right? They say that these people have an opportunity to make decisions in the organization. So then what you do is you subpoena, for example, the telephone calls. Who's been calling for information? Why are they so secretive about this information? They say that they're safe, they're affordable, and they want to grow, and they help people to, experience other life changes. That's not true, because people are terribly terrified. They say that the vision of this organization, I don't know, is to address poverty, homelessness, and stigma. Where does the stigma thing come from? Every person who becomes economically displaced is not a person with a biomedical problem. These people are pretty fucking sick, let me tell you. And, it says that there was a commitment to improving the quality of life of the people who actually survive. Then they say that their board composition is actually made up of 15 persons, 20 persons. It could even be more than that. Because what about the status of deceased persons in 867 units? Those are also persons who made decisions in the organization. What were they saying? Because it says right on their website certain things. Nonprofit data collection violence. I'm going to read you just a little piece about the need to always speak up for people that cannot speak up for themselves, or people that are speaking up for themselves but are actually further harassed by this thing called biomedical data collection in connection with nonprofit organizations. Remember, they have a black male and two males, black male and white male. I'm looking at the black male. How many of them actually can look at that black male and say, you know what, I'm actually interested in what is happening to this person, and not so much, oh, I want to fuck that male. I'm looking at him, and I'm like, you know what, that's fucking disgusting. You know? They've castrated him, and they've publicized the castration. So what kind of colonization training have these motherfuckers had? I was showing you something called, what did I do? Oh, it was actually a piece of data that was actually distributed at something called a police services board meeting. What about all the police services, for example, in Ontario? What are they doing? Why is this thing called police? I don't understand what police are. I understand what peace officer services is. I don't understand what this thing called police is. I'm going to read you a little excerpt. And you know what? What you should do is also get in touch with something called Crime Stoppers. Because you know what? We're going to look at their data. Are they actually assessing stuff? There's data, then there's our data. It's going to be edited a little bit. There was a person that was actually reporting sexual assault in a community meeting, in a tenant meeting. The management of a nonprofit organization translated that sexual assault experience to a biomedical